Welcome to the Prison Pod, a podcast for all people experiencing incarceration. The mission of this podcast is to save lives, restore hope, reduce suffering, and recidivism. Many show ideas come directly from the listeners, so please write the host. Prison Pod, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine, 04473. Here is your host, Ms. Valerie.
Hello again. We're wrapping up a season of the Prison Pod, and we have one of our final guests for this season, and very unique, I must say. Since my whole focus was on peace studies in college, I'm very interested in what Barbara With will be sharing with us today about her World Peace Tour. Welcome, Barbara.
Oh, Valerie, thanks for having me, and hi to everybody who's listening.
Are you back in the States now?
I am. I've been on quite a tour. In fact, I'm back in Madison, Wisconsin at the moment as we speak. But I left my home in October 15th, and I've been traveling ever since, and I'm due up back in my home on June 1st. So it's been a long road.
So where did you start here with this? I don't even know where to begin with this because I was just amazed at what you're doing. But the World Peace Tour, when I was looking at your website, I saw that you had something on there. It said, an invitation for the participation of the willing. And at first it creeped me out a little bit because it sounded a little cultish. But then I read a worldwide nonviolent action to end the age of war. And I said, that is beautiful. I need to talk to this woman.
Well, I'm glad it caught you because and the story weaves in all these different parts of my life. I didn't start out to be a peace activist. I started out as a musician all those many years ago. I started writing music when I was 12. And then I went into rock and roll for 20 years. And my whole focus and intention was to be a rock star. And it was my exposure to psychic things, I guess. As a teenager, the mom of a friend of mine gave readings and profoundly touched by this voice that came out of her. She never remembered what she said. She was just an antenna. And slowly I realized that writing music, the process, is kind of the same thing that she does. Like she goes into outer space and pulls out information about me that she never would know. She would tell me words that I were thinking word for word, So through the years, it came out. I started to spontaneously do what she did, channel, in 1987. And then I started doing group channeling because I wanted to know what is this message that's coming through me. People would come and they'd get their reading and they go off. And I didn't really ever sit down and analyze what it said with them. I just gave it to them. So I started doing groups in 93 with two other women, Kim and Teresa. We called ourselves the Psychic Sorority. And out of those groups came this realization that I was more than just an antenna, that I could actually communicate with people who had passed on. They came to me. And that when we started doing groups, Kim and Teresa asked the voices, who are you? And they said, we're angels. Call us angels. So our first book, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, Talking with the Angels, is because at the very beginning, these voices told us not only to document everything, leave a paper trail, because someday people are going to look back and want to read about this. So we published Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, Talking with the Angels in 1997. And out of that came the opportunity to do some channeling in a way I never had before. I was asked to channel an interview with Princess Diana from beyond the grave. And I thought, what are you talking about? How would that work? Usually the dead people come to me and I help them, whatever, with their loved ones. But so out of that whole experience, which you can read all of this on my website and all the backfill, but from that group of people I started channeling famous people came Albert Einstein. And the process that the angels told us back in the day when we started, we didn't know what we were doing. We just was that they had this theoretical process to resolve conflict in a revolutionary way that didn't involve everybody else, that was based on an energy map, and they needed people to test it on actual conflict. So oddly and brilliantly, we just took to this mission like fish to water, and sure enough, at one point we had our first conflict, and we actually took the transcripts and did it a different way, and truly miraculous things started to take place. So we were proving it was working. And so when I came upon Princess Diana and the Party of 12, which is my next book, Party of 12, The Afterlife Interviews with 12 famous dead people working in the afterlife for world peace, including Albert Einstein, the two things kind of made sense to me. Like, oh, there were the angels who, whatever, I was always in an antenna, so I guess they're angels, gave us this process that's revolutionizing our lives. And then now I come upon this. And from Einstein came a unified field theory with these maps of human consciousness and scientific, quantifiable definition of compassion as the fifth fundamental force of the universe. So this is kind of, I'm trying to make a long story short, but this is how I got to where I am today at 69 years old, and I've pretty much dedicated the rest of my natural life to getting this message out. I've been doing it for, well, all my life, but consciously for over 30 years. We started training Conflict Revolution in 1999, and I actually trained it first as staff development and as I had worked for a nonprofit in St. Paul that helped women who had been incarcerated make it back in. We had a jobs in the trades program, and I taught it as anger management. I taught it as conflict resolution. I taught it as manifestation. So it's got a lot of rubber on the road with its applications, and has proven to be as miraculous as those are the angels told us.
So now with the conflict resolution, do you have revolution?
Yes.
Revolution.
My book got
write that down.
banned on Amazon for a while because of its title, Conflict Revolution. And they thought it was like about how to raise conflict and start a revolution. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
But you're talking about nonviolent, peaceful action. Am I correct?
But also it's a way to look at ourselves first. Before we look outside at what he's doing to us or what they're doing to us or what the wars are or any of that, it's a way to first stop and deal with conflict here within based on these really simple maps that Einstein has delivered and that the three of us have tested and more people around the world have tested it. But it's based on this knowing yourself, being dedicated to understanding what we have what we call three human dimensions of intellect, intuition, and emotion. And they all work together, and there's a way that we teach you how to have this revolutionary way to approach conflict, first starting with you. Let's see what's conflicted in you first. Go to the root and make the adjustments, and then everything changes, sort of miraculously. You're able to create things that you can't go at directly. You can't go into the arena. And I've got a small example of that. After our first fight, the three of us, and we did that naturally, and we had this miraculous, I was playing music at a hotel in downtown Minneapolis, and there was a waitress there who never had the time of day for me. She was as cold as ice to me. I worked there for 2 years, and I don't care. People, I'm not here for you to like me. I'm here to play the music. And I walked in that night, and she could not get enough of me. Oh, Barbara, do you like Patti Smith? I've got tapes I could give you. And she put $20 in my tip jar. And I thought I could never have facilitated that change if I'd gone into the bar and said, hey, how come you don't like me? Or why are you so cold? It just could never have happened that way. So that was one of the first really sort of, as a scientist, I stepped up to take the challenge. I'm going to be the scientist to study this theory and see how it works on myself. And it was working, pretty miraculously, and it hasn't stopped.
So people that want to learn more about what you're doing and how to get involved with this worldwide nonviolent action, how do they go about doing that?
Well, one simple way is barbarawith.com. I also have a YouTube, and you'll make these available on your podcast. I have a YouTube channel, and I have more free stuff than anybody could ever hope for. I don't really sell a lot of my work that I dedicate to putting up for people to learn from. I certainly charge for readings or if you're going to have me speak, but for the most part, I have a lot of information that's just there and free, and it's a lot. I've probably got 170 videos on YouTube. I've got also I have a website called partyof12.com. Party of 12, Party of 12. And that is a site that goes way back to, I'm thinking 2009. And that is just chock full of everything and anything you'd ever want to hear about this topic. But if you go to synergyalliance.llc or barbarawith.com, you'll get the latest up-to-date information, and there's enough guidance in there, I think, to direct you to self-learn.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about your tour. Where did you start and where did you end? And what was the key thing you brought home with you?
It started actually in the officially on July 9th, 2023. And that is the anniversary of the Russell Einstein Manifesto. That was Einstein's last comment to the world that they read after he died. And what it was a plea to governments to solve their conflicts peacefully, because no one will survive World War III. Now, you would think Einstein was a psychic, which was whatever. So I picked that date. It's been in for a long time. And I've given up. I had many little side gigs all my life as a musician. You always had a side gig, and I gave it all up to put everything that I have into this mission, because here we are perched on World War III. And back in the 90s, when we started this work and we started to train it, world peace was a lovely idea, but nobody ever thought about World War III. And so I have this amazing information that can really miraculously make changes on a microcosm. Why not test it on the macrocosm? So that's why I say, when I called for the participation of the willing to take part in this worldwide nonviolent movement, you don't go anywhere. You don't join a group. You figure out who you are. And I'm certainly welcome to, I'm going to have a downloadable course as soon as I get home. I'm 3/4 of the way through it, but I've been on the road. So yeah, I started on, me and the psychic sorority put all of our books together in one big library, and we became this focused entity to get this out into the world. And I left home on October 15th. I rented out my house. And I've been traveling ever since. I went to Duluth, where my church is, and I started the official tour with the channeling. And I went down to Minneapolis and spoke at a church there. And then I drove down to Georgia, where one of my best conflict revolutionaries and dearest friends, Debbie, lives. And from there, I flew out of Orlando to the UK. And I arrived on January 25th, and I returned on April 10th, I think. And in that time, I also went over to Paris for a little while, and I was in Calais and in Ghent. And my whole purpose for the first, because this is the rest of my life, remember, this is not like a tour. This is the rest of my life, to be this peace pilgrim, to talk about this, to get people thinking about this, to teach and train and channel and maybe even sing while I'm out there. And the way that I started was I joined a website called Trusted House Sitters. And I arranged for pet sits across mostly the UK. I had one in France, and I have some here. But so I had probably 7 different places around the UK that I traveled to and looked after pets and houses, got to know the people in the community, got to have conversation. I got to be in London for the Julian Assange trials that were going on. That's important to me. I'm also a journalist. I went up to Ghent, where I gave one of my Einstein books to a very noted voice in today's world, Matthias Desmet. He writes about propaganda and the effects of propaganda and undoing propaganda. And then I came home to Georgia and drove to Tucson and attended the Science of Consciousness conference put on by the University of Arizona, Tucson, which was basically a conference of all the left brain scientists, the astrophysicists, the astrobiologists, the neurophysicists, who have been 30 years studying the science of consciousness. So this year, they allowed me to come in and say, well, I don't know anything about any of that, but I talk to dead people, and what do you think of this? And long story short, I came away just super jazzed. I got one of my books, Imagining Einstein, into Deepak Chopra's hands. And I met some other people that were a guy from MIT who said, you're onto something, keep doing what you're doing. And so it's really an exciting time. And then I drove up through Taos into Colorado, and I just got here to Madison, and I'm here for a while, and then I'm up. I live in northern Wisconsin in Lake Superior on an island. So I'll get to be home soon and plan the next leg. But this is
What an amazing work. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I love it when I see, and I'm going to say people our age because
Yes.
we are very close in age.
69.
And at this point of life, not retiring. I mean, I have no intentions of retiring. I was talking about, we just had our 37th wedding anniversary at 65. And I says, well, maybe we'll do another 37, and thinking, well, wait a minute, that's going to make me over 100. But my plan is, if I can do it healthy, is to live to be 100. And I love that you're doing compassionate work. And our work is very different, but it's very similar because we're trying to get people to understand their own self-worth and their importance in this place that we're at.
Absolutely.
So now, are you going to take a break in between all of this and just enjoy home when you get there for a little bit? Are you going to pack up and hit the road again?
No, I have traditionally lived in the north in the summer and in the south in the winter. For many years, I had a winter place in Corpus Christi, so I went back and forth. So I have a whole summer life. It's a resort community, so it's, obviously the summers, there's more people and stuff going on, but And then, but my plan is to return to the road next October. And I have some invitations to speak at another Science of Consciousness conference at the end of September. And I'm planning on just continuing following my intuition, which is what we teach in Conflict Revolution. And I would say too, I would love to teach this in prisons. I think it would be incredibly liberating because it's a completely different way of handling, first of all, handling emotion. We teach this completely different way to handle emotion, and then how to master the intellect so that intuition can be the voice, because it's the voice of compassion, the fifth fundamental force of the universe. So that's that. And oddly enough, go ahead.
They could make that available through the tablets as a course. I think that would be something that they'd really be interested in, because a lot of focus right now is to restore people back to being able to function as a fully human being, however that is, or whatever that need be. And as you know, it always starts with the inner work. We've got to go in, take care of our own stuff. We have to forget for a little bit what's going on outside, because we do need to keep that focus on ourselves. And we're not any good to anyone else if we're not taking care of our own stuff.
See, this is the willing. This is what I'm talking about, is that you have to be willing, everyone, you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to do it, because no one can force you to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then you're neglecting yourself. So, So, and conflict revolution is for those who want to participate, like scientists. Let's see what this does.
Well, I'm really intrigued about these conferences because, I never realized that something like that existed. So you're going to have to send me some info on that, because
absolutely,
what an amazing thing that there's so many people that will get together to discuss these things.
Yes.
And like minds, when they get together, it's a little scary.
Well, it was really interesting to sit in this conference full of, I don't know how many there were, 500, 800 really, 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 really left brain scientists, all talking, all generating this energy, and realizing that in the beginning, it was all scientists. There were no psychologists or Rumi poets or Deepak Chopras. It was all about the science, and they talked in that scientific language that I can't understand, And through the years of studying, they discovered that there's more. And so it started to grow naturally because of their discoveries. And now there's, you have Deepak as the keynote and doing the meditations, and Rumi meditations in the morning, and lots of psychologists. So yeah, I touched a lot of different people across a lot of different cross sections. And for me, just to say, having been with this information for so long and thinking this is unified field theory, that conflict revolution really does work like they do, to see the scientists all go, well, yeah, and the psychologists go, well, yeah, and the Rumi poets and everybody else go, yeah, to everything I'm saying, was a dream come true. It's like, it is what I've always perceived it to be. What a wild story, though. Yeah, I talked to Einstein.
It verifies the importance of having an open mind, number one, because the first thing people say is, oh, channeling, really? But because I went through this many years ago when we had Seth books in the house.
Oh, love Seth.
And people were saying Seth. And White Eagle was another one.
Yes.
Right. So I'm talking way back, right?
Yes,
40 years ago. But still, when I was talking about that with my husband, and I'm saying, well, this is really kind of weird. And he says, it's because we don't understand it. It's the unexplained. We haven't been exposed to it. But when you look at the messages, it doesn't matter where it came from.
Exactly.
Because the message is the truth. And that's one thing with Seth. When he was the channelings of Seth, um, everything was the truth. So if everything that's coming out of this is beneficial and positive, it is certainly not, because you talk to some of your Christian people and they're going to say, "Oh, this is evil. This is the work of the devil." We know that's not true. When you're doing spiritual work, it's not devil worship.
Well, and that
But
they're not willing. They're not willing to have an open mind.
right, and that's exactly it. Is you have to be willing to have an open mind. And if we're closed off to others' beliefs, we are never going to mend the bridge.
And just a short story of when I first took out my book Imagining Einstein, I was on book tour and booked into what they called the metaphysical meetup. And I thought it was going to be like, us talking about Seth and writing. No, it was amateur physicists and amateur chemists, and it was the really left-brain guys. And I got in there as they were conducting the meeting before I got up, and I was like, oh, cripe. How did I get here? And so I had to get up to invite them to be willing to have an open mind. And one way that I was able to do that is that I don't push that this is Einstein. I don't know. I've had mental health issues. I don't know. You have to look at the information. So let me show it to you, and then you tell me what you think it is. That's what I would like. And so that opens up the mind rather than somebody coming at you trying to convince you that no, this is Einstein. Yeah, they were very, very, very impressed. And the physicist was like, "Well, you're saying you're taking the 0-point gravity theory and you're marrying it to the blah 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 theory, And I'm like, I don't know, am I? I think that's the power of how that I'm not a scientist. Right? I mean, it doubles the impressiveness of the message that, I mean, I could have thought it up, but all I wanted to be was a rock star. So it wasn't like I was focused on any of this. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's
So,
funny when you bring science in, it backs up your theories, and it's so good to get recognized. And I would think that field is pretty male dominant also. Did
although
you?
I have to say, I met some really amazing young astrophysicist gals that were right where you think adding the right brain, adding the intuitive to it would take them. I was so impressed that they had this incredible balance of scientific whatever and intuitive, already knowing there's an unknown.
Do you think maybe that's the younger generation coming up?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
They're
there were a
looking,
bunch of old guys everywhere, running the show. But
yeah, as usual, right?
yeah, yeah. So, but it was a delight to put my book into Deepak's hands, and I waited to the end of the line because he was tired of all the selfies, and I took the book and I said, I've been impelled to give this to you and tell you to read it. And he took the book, and I was going to apologize, like it's just little, it won't take you long. He said, I will read it, and that to me is like payday. That I could get Einstein's information into his hands. And that's kind of what my mission is, more than, I want to be this big spiritual guide. I want this information to influence people like it's influenced us, because we create miracles. We create miracles when we do it. And so if it works on the little level, the more people who actually, and so many people do this anyway without calling it conflict revolution. You know what I mean? So many people understand the importance of starting with self and mastering the mind and feeling the feelings and being in the present moment.
Well, when you get your course or whatever you
Yes.
called that together, you'll have to make sure and let me know so I can share it with everybody, because I think that's something that a lot of people could use in their work.
Well, if there was a way I didn't realize the prisons had like pod iPad curriculum. Is that what you called it?
Yes. And they're always looking for good material that's going to interest people, that's going to focus their direction in a positive way.
Yeah.
And definitely what you're doing would do that. So we'll have to revisit that in a little
We
bit,
will absolutely.
especially if you decide you'd like to design something for them. Because if you did
I
an
would love to
outline,
design. Yeah, I would love to design something for them.
yeah, I think it would be great. And I think that, those out there listening would really love to have something new that they haven't seen 1,000 times before.
Exactly. And plus, it works. Einstein, I did an Einstein channel recently, and he said, when we first started, we were concerned about how we were going to inspire you, the three of you, to do this. Like, how would we, as these angels, inspire you to want to do this work that's going to be so hard? But we quickly saw that it wasn't us. It was the truth that inspired you. So when we got the information, because it was the truth, we were so inspired by it. And we took the truth and ran. And Lily, by the way, she wouldn't call herself a Christian, but she probably knows the Bible better than most Christians, and wrote a book called Second Coming, kind of based on interpreting the Bible in a kind of revolutionary way, based on this kind of premise of self-healing and self-love. So
Well, you'll have to send me that information and I'll add all kinds of info on the YouTube piece so people can check everything out because I like sharing as much information as we can,
yes.
To broaden people's minds and make them understand that we don't live in a little box.
Mm-mm. And what's interesting too is that early on, when the angels were describing what they were going to do, and they said, all we're really going to do is we're going to change your perspective just a little bit. And this thing we're going to teach you to do, you can do anywhere, at any time. You can do locked in a closet. You can do, captured by people. You can do it out in the open. It's what you can do at any moment is change that perspective. But we always used to say that you can change your perspective if you're locked up in a closet.
Well,
Okay.
that's one thing too that, I'm always saying about reading and education. No one can take that from you. No matter where you are, your own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and what you learn is yours. You own that. No one can take it. So that's where I'm always saying that as much as we can possibly learn, we should. Every day I look forward to learning something new. And that's kind of why I do the work that I'm doing now at this point, is because I love hearing from other people and their stories and how did you get from point A to point B and what strategies did you use when you were having a crappy day?
Yeah.
We all have different, and I think by doing this and for people like us meeting with each other, we are lifting others up. And that to me is the most important thing in this world is that we are helping others. However, you are capable of doing it. If it's putting a smile on your face and saying good morning to everyone you pass on the street, or if it's on a grand scale where you're with hundreds of thousands of people speaking to them about truth and love, it's just, we need to do more of this.
Absolutely. And it's, kindness is one of the most powerful, easiest things to do. And what conflict revolution teaches us is first and foremost to create an operating system in ourselves where we treat ourselves with self-love, where we have learned what we call it aligning to compassion, where the flow comes up, we honor our emotions, we listen to our intuition, and our intellect is just waiting to hear what intuition wants it to do, and it makes that decision. And for the good of the whole, we work for the good of the whole, starting with
That's
ourselves.
beautiful.
So
we're coming up on the end here. Is there anything that we have not talked about, or any of your material that we haven't talked about that other people need to know about?
Well, I'd like to leave just a really quick few mini tips, right, of
Great.
how people can do conflict resolution.
Beautiful.
Okay, the first thing is get to know these three human dimensions. They're like spiritual organs, right? You have a heart, a kidney, a liver. You treat them differently. So emotion in your solar plexus, intuition in your heart center, and intellect in your head. And that the most important thing is that emotion is a completely different organ than intellect. Thinking does not feeling. Thinking is not feeling. Thinking is needed. There's a purpose, but it's not feeling. So if you really truly want to feel your emotion, the idea is to feel it in your solar plexus and breathe with your breath and imagine it coming up through your body, because as it comes up into your heart center where your intuition is, it's bringing the voice of compassion with it. And what we do is we teach people how to feel the whole gamut, because where the conflicts lie is not in having anger. Not conflict. It's uncomfortable. What happens is that emotion comes up and intuition is going to tell you something, probably like if you're angry, take a breath. Intuition is always impelling us to take a next step. That's all it's doing. Take a breath or rest, and it gets to intellect where you've been given the power to actually take your hand and hold the steering wheel and pull to the left if you're going to turn left, like if it was saying turn left. So it can say no to intuition. And all that emotion fuels angry thought projected. So we break the cycle. With breathing and feeling, you don't want that emotion. You want to be conscious as you're breathing, but you don't want it to marry to any thought other than something that's compassion. I don't know why I'm feeling anger. I just need to feel and breathe. Not projecting, not defining, not analyzing, just the pure of emotion, like a wave, it'll pass. And then how do we master the wild horses of the intellect to understand its place in this alignment? So that's kind of it's a brief overview, but you start out in the morning after your prayer of gratitude and step into the witness of yourself. You're going to watch yourself. You're going to watch what you're thinking. You're going to watch what you're feeling. You're going to watch what intuition might be impelling you to do to take the next most advantageous step for the good of this whole situation. That's peacemaking. So, and the last thing I'd like to leave is don't ever underestimate what I just talked about, that personal work that you're going to be willing to do. Don't underestimate how it affects world peace. Because if it affects the microcosm, like I know it's going to, that your life is going to suddenly have a deeper, fuller, richer meaning wherever you are. But the worldwide nonviolent action is to see how many of us can do this, and then watch what happens in the world around us, because they are directly connected. So the more we make peace at home, the more we influence the global peace as well.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, Barbara.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and have me back, because we'll have more to talk about.
Oh, definitely. When you get everything together, we're definitely going to have to get together again. All right. So I'm just going to say a quick goodbye. Hold on. I'd like to thank you all for joining us again on the Prison Pod. I know today's subject was a little bit different, but I thought it was a very important one, and I wanted us to cover it. This is going to wrap up the season, and as many of you know, Prison Pod is going back nationwide. Edova will be adding Prison Pod back on the tablets, so if you're listening to this, tell your friends that it is available everywhere, not just in Maine now, and I really look forward to hearing from all of you. So until next time, pick up that book.
You have been listening to the Prison Pod, a podcast not just for those in prison but for anyone who has been affected by incarceration. Ms. Valerie would love for you to write to her with your questions, comments, and show ideas. The address is Prison Pod, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine. 04473.